painting. There's some more blending in this painting, so we're going to make sure to remember that while we're blending colors on our canvas, we want both colors to be wet as we're working. If they're not wet as you're working, then they're not going to blend together. So if you start having trouble, you're going to start thinking about whether or not those colors are wet. Remember, when you angle your canvas in different ways, you'll be able to tell whether or not it's wet based on if you can see a reflection. So for this, what we're going to do is we are actually going to start with painting, and then we'll go ahead and we will draw on top of it once it's dry. Remember, these are craft acrylics, so they're going to dry pretty quickly, so it's not going to be too long of a wait here for that to happen. Also remember, during any of these segments that you can stop, take a break, pause, all that good stuff. Just make sure your brushes are cleaned off, make sure they're nice and dried, and make sure your paint's not sitting out for too long. If you get up to do something quick, that's not a big deal, but if you get up for too long, then those paints are going to be dried out and you're not going to be able to work with them. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to start with taking our biggest brush, and we are going to paint our water, and we are going to use this kind of brush stroke and angle to go ahead and paint our first colors, and this is going to be the water. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to paint some just areas of ground, and then in here is where we're going to paint our whale that's kind of swimming through the water here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by dipping our biggest brush into our white paint, and it seems silly, I know, but we are going to start painting this top portion white, and we're just going to do like a half circle that's about this wide. So if you look real careful, about this wide, and we're going to paint it completely in, but we're going to keep using this motion instead of going straight back and forth. We're going to keep making kind of that smile, and then as I go, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix a little bit of a light blue here because we want it to go from lighter down to darker. So I've got a little bit of a light blue, and I'm going to go right underneath that. Now, as we've spoken before, when we blend, we want these colors to blend together. So right now I've got two separate areas of color. They're not blended together. Now what I want to be careful of is this dark blue is going to overpower my white. So I do want to make sure that some of this blue is wiped off so that it doesn't completely change my white. But I'm going to just carefully blend them as they go. Now I can tell that either I didn't hit this spot up here with the white, or that white already started to dry. So I'm going to take a little bit more white here, and I'm going to just add that white and see how that now is very nicely blending. Much easier to work with here. So we're going from lighter to darker. Just like that. I'm going to keep making that smile. And then as I go down, I'm just going to keep adding a touch more of the blue while still making that same brush stroke. But so again, it gets darker and darker. I'm not making it that complete dark blue yet though. I'm gonna let it get a little bit darker as I go, but you can still see that there's white. Now again, I've got those two blocks of color here. So I want to make sure that I blend up. So I'm going to go up, still making that same brush stroke. And I'm going to keep going over those spaces. And as I go over those spaces, see how they just blended right together. So that's what's important. You want to keep going over that same area, and that's what gets those colors blended together, so you don't have specific bands of color. You want to keep going over them. And then I'm just gonna add some more dark blue as I go down. still making that smile shape here. I'm just going to continue that as I go. Just like that. Now I do want to get a little bit of just that blue, so I'm going to rinse this off. Tapping it around on the bottom of my cup is what's really going to help here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe that extra water out, squeeze it dry, and then I'm going to figure out about how low I want to go with my blue. So I'm going to try and figure out kind of where I want my ground to be, and I think I'm going to make it like that. So we've got two kind of little hills. So I'm going to just fill this in with just the blue now. Fill in those sections here. But again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure I've got that same brush stroke going. So now you can see exactly how it goes from light all the way down to dark. As we get closer to the bottom of the floor, that's where it's going to get darkest, and then obviously where there's daylight it's going to be the lightest. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to rinse out that brush again. Make sure it's nice and dry, no surprises. And I am going to use that light blue again. So I'm going to go ahead and lighten it up with the white. And I'm going to go right in here, same brush. Now again, remember, we're going to want to draw on this. So if you see any thick lines of paint that we need to spread out, it's important that you do that. But if I have this light blue on my brush, I don't want to go in right now and do this. What I want to do is I want to wipe off that brush first. Make it nice and clean, because otherwise you're going to have a blending issue. So if you do that, just make sure that you kind of wipe it off and then you let it dry and start again. So I've got this side, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to work on this side. I'm using both sides of my brushes, but I'm getting that nice smooth line by using the thin side of my brush here. And I'm going to let this dark blue kind of mix in back here. And do some zigzags, kind of going this way. Finish this section off. Again, if I look for those glistens, I can tell that up here is dry, so I'm going to be able to hold that spot without creating a thumbprint in my painting. There we go. So I've got kind of my ground going there. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of that medium blue now. It's a little bit darker than the light. And again, I'm gonna kind of make a little pathway here. So it's wider back here and it's kind of coming in here. It's just to separate that ground so we can tell it's not flat. Just kind of like that. So we've got that going. So now we can go ahead and we can rinse out this brush. Make sure it's nice and dry and ready to go. Now we're going to kind of look at our canvas here, and I can see lots of little reflections. So I want to make sure that the main part of where I'm painting is dry. I'm going to go ahead and fan it just a little bit to make that go ahead and help. So I don't expect my ground to get dry, but I do expect the majority of my water to get dry. Yep, if I look at an angle here, I can see there's just a couple little reflections here I'm not super concerned about for drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing my whale. I'm going to take my pencil, and my whale is going to be coming in from this angle. So his tail's going to be back here, and he's going to be coming in down here, so his head's going to be down here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where I want his tail to be. Now, when I talk about his tail, I am talking about not his fins of his tail, but like the point. So I want to leave room so that he can have fins. So I'm going to start out here, and I am just going to, like, this is part of his tail right here, and then it's going to dip in just slightly. He's got a fin up there. And then I am going to come around, big rounded shape here, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of make this into like a teardrop. So it looks like a larger teardrop, but what I want to do, I want to fix this here. I want to make this a little bit wider right here. So no to this line. So you can erase right on it. So I'm hoping you guys can see that. So got like a little teardrop shape right here. Now in the back, his tail is going to be the edge here. And then he's going to have one fin going here, like that, and then the other fin is going to be coming down like that. We want to make sure that they are about the same size. Like that. So there's his fins there. He's going to have a fin on his back. I want to be cautious not to make it too much like a shark fin. So we've got just curves around here. Kind of see that. And then for this fin, you want to make sure that he's kind of angled like this. So I just came in a little bit from that line. And then he's going to come out like that. Almost a triangle, but it's a little bit bent. As you can see, it's fin like this. Okay? Then, depending on where that fin is, maybe I just want to push it up just a little bit here. So I just changed this angle here. So again, I'm going to erase these lines here. Oops, I didn't erase that one very good. There. So now you can see his fin is right here. Okay? And then, right at the tip here, of this fin, I'm gonna give it a little rounded line here, and then smoothly come back down, and then come back around. And here's his mouth, so it's going to extend just a little bit past that teardrop shape. I'm going to come back in, so it's got a curve. And now we can see the top of his head and his top lip. So right underneath, I'm coming just a little ways in, like that. So I don't know if you can see that, but his top lip comes out and then goes right into here. And his bottom lip's just a little bit shorter. It's set in just a little bit more and then comes down around here. And then his eye is going to be lower and back here. And he's going to have that little white spot, just like that. And all of this down here is going to be white. Now if I look at this, I'm looking and I'm thinking, maybe I want to make this a little bit wider here. So you can kind of play with it so that you can see exactly what you like. Now again, don't forget, go ahead and erase whatever lines you don't want. And remember, I'm drawing dark so that you can see it, but you're going to want to sketch so that it's a little bit lighter and be easier to cover. So you can kind of see it comes around here like that. And the only other thing that I'm thinking, I think I want to flatten his head just a little bit. So instead of making it so curved right there, I'm just going to flatten it just a little bit. Alright, so I think I've got my whale here. Now again, if you don't have your whale exactly how you want him, I want you to go ahead and hit pause. I want you to start looking at his shape. I want you to start trying to figure out what makes sense. If all of a sudden you're looking and this back fin is back here, well, that's not really going to make much sense if we're looking at a whale. I want you to think about his eye. If his eye is all the way up here, that's not really where they are. So we want to pay attention to that. So now that I've got that drawn, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my biggest brush and I'm going to dip into my black paint, and I'm going to start by using that flat edge. And again, as always, the harder that I press, the wider my line is going to be. So in here I can fill in this whole area. I want to be careful of his eye and his the white spot there. There we go. I'm going to fill this whole section in just like that. I really want to make sure my edges are nice smooth lines. So again, it's going to be important if you need to get more paint to go ahead and get more paint. I can tell that I'm running low here. I didn't pour myself enough to begin with. So now I'm going to be able to get nice smooth edges because I've got enough paint on my brush. Just like that. I don't know if you can see, but I can see a thick line of paint, so I'm going to make sure that I completely spread that out. And go right over my pencil marks. So there's that top lip and how we were talking that it's going to come out just a little bit here. And I'm going to come around. And I'm just going to fill in that original teardrop shape that we were making for right now. Not going to worry about all the fins. And go ahead and go around that white spot. There we go. I've got that whole spot painted in here. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into those fins, but I'm going to leave a little line for where the fins touch the body. And the reason that I want to do that is because I want to be able to add a little highlight there so that we can tell the difference between the fin and the body. Because if we just paint it all solid black, you're not going to be able to tell where the fin starts and where the body starts. So that's going to be important. And as I go, if we need to get a different brush, don't forget to do that. So when I get into some of these smaller spaces, I'm going to want to be sure that I go ahead and do that I get my smaller brush here. Got my fins kind of going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean out this brush. Really, really good. Black is hard to get out sometimes, so you want to really make sure you tap it around. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my smaller brush and add just a little bit of white so it's a really, really, really dark gray. And I'm going to go right along that line. And you're going to just barely be able to tell. And if you can't tell at all, go ahead and just add a little bit more so that it's even lighter. You just don't want it to be a complete outline. There. So I can tell the difference now between where his fin starts from the body. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And again, I started with that darkest gray. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some white so that we can tell again, just like that. And then up here, I want to go ahead, I'm going to make sure that I get in those small spaces first with just the black. Don't forget to turn that canvas if it's easier. It's always important that your arms and your hands are comfortable as you're trying to paint. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right brush stroke. So I'm making sure to cover all of my pencil lines here. So I've got that all nice and filled in. I see a spot right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. There we go. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of a light gray again. And I'm going to add it right to the top of the tail. That's a little bit lighter than I was hoping for, so I'm going to go in with some black. I'm going to darken that just a little bit so it's not as drastic. There we go. And then we can do the same thing on his tail, on those fins. Add a little bit of white and do just a little highlight there. So kind of like that. And then I can see a couple areas here. I want to make sure that I go back in. Sometimes it seems tedious, but as always, whenever you're doing something, you should always take the extra time to make sure that you're doing your best work. Because if you're doing your best, even if it doesn't come out exactly how you planned, you can be proud of yourself because you know that you did your best. And every time you try it, you're going to get better and better and better. Just like anything, painting takes practice. So it's important that you keep trying. Which is, again, the great thing about this is that as we're going, you can stop and hit pause so that you can try and work something a little bit more the way you want. So take advantage of that. Take your time so that you can really make sure that you have it exactly the way that you want. There we go. So then what we're going to do, we're going to clean this part off here. Make sure it's nice and cleaned off. Again, you really want to make sure with the black, we're going to be using that brush for some white. So we want to make sure that we get some nice bright white. We don't want it to be gray. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm looking all around this spot and the paint all around there is dry. So I can go right up to it and I don't have to worry that it's going to smear because it's dry. Again, that's the good thing about working with these craft acrylics is that they dry pretty fast. So we can keep working on our projects. Now again, as always, remember when you're anchoring your hand onto your painting to get something like this, you want to make sure you're not sticking it in wet paint. So you want to be careful. Now with this tiny brush too, I've got that white on there and I want to make a really dark gray. Again, not so dark that you can't see it, but I really want it to be a dark gray because I want his eye to come in here. So you can see it's a dark gray circle. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a black circle inside of that. You can see that? So it's a dark gray and then black for the pupil. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into my medium brush here. And I am going to paint the white. And again, when I look at the black, I can see some wet spots right in here, maybe on the spin a little bit, but right by the mouth where we're painting, I don't see any wet spots. So we should be pretty safe. We don't have to worry that we're going to smear it. But remember, it's how wet yours is, right? So you want to make sure that your black is dry before you go up against it with the white. Because again, for this part, we want it to be nice and bright white. There we go. Pick up some more paint here. Just like that. Good. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rinse off this brush. Get it nice and dry. Remember, always dry those handles. Make sure no water sneaks out from somewhere. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them some highlights. So again, I don't want it to be super bright white, but I want it to be a little bit lighter gray. do want it to be a highlight here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead with that thin way of my brush. You know what, I'm going to add just a little bit of water to make it, you can kind of see here, kind of dragged there. So I want it to be smoother. Just going to give it a little highlight here. Now again, I can take my black and I can blend that highlight just a little bit more so it's not such a harsh highlight there. Don't want it to be too crazy. I'm making them look a little bit more rounded here. You're just going to keep playing with that until you lighten it up to a spot that you want. There we go. That's more what I'm looking for here. So I keep using that rounded stroke here so that way he doesn't look flat. And then again, I'm going to lighten it up. I'm going to give just a little bit here. And then I'm going to go just a little bit along his mouth here. And a little highlight. A couple little areas there. I'm going to go ahead and clean off that brush and take that tiny brush. I'm going to give him just a little reflection there on his eye. First, I'm going to take this tiny brush and, oops, I got a drip. Didn't dry it off enough. Be careful. Okay, so first I'm going to take this. I'm going to really finish off that edge. I was doing it with the bigger brush, so I want to make sure that I go back in and clean up those edges. And if you're going to do something, you want to make sure you're doing your best. All right, good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start doing some seaweed. So I'm going to mix a little bit of green onto my plate. So I'm going to use blue and yellow. Make sure it's all nice and mixed here. Now, as you can see, make sure this is dry. But then on my plate, if I take both brushes and push them together, I can push some of that extra paint out of this brush, since this isn't the brush that I'm going to use for it, but that way I'm not wasting any paint. Go ahead and clean that out. Dry it off. And I can just decide where I want to put that. So I've got it rolled into my brush. And then I'm just going to find a starting point, come down, find a stopping point. Now, seaweed's in water, so we do want to make sure that maybe we crisscross some, maybe some are going to get a little bit bent over here. You want to show some movement. And the easiest way to do that is to make things like this move. So there's a little bit of seaweed there. We can throw some up back here. Just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some more yellow. So I'll get another shade in here. I'm going to keep mixing till I find the color that I really want, but I want it to be a little bit lighter than the other color, so I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it too, so that we can tell that there is a difference. And remember, use little amounts because that way you're not wasting all of your color. If all of a sudden you don't like what you're mixing, you can fix it a lot easier. So then I'm going to do just another little layer here. I'm going to add just a touch of water to make it glide a little better. And just add some in here. Again, we can make them crisscross and bend and all that good stuff. Don't forget these guys in the back here. Just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and we will mix just a little bit of pink. It's going to be a darker pink this time. Just like that. And I'm going to roll my brush in. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to make some plants down here. So again, the wider that I want my line, the harder that I'm going to press. Now I'm going to start at the tops here with thinner spots like that. And we're just going to keep branching as we go, like that. And just like the trees that we've done, we're going to go ahead and as we get to the base, it's going to get even thicker. And everything else is going to be kind of thin. Just going to mix a little more here. Roll it in. Got a little bit of a darker shade here, which I think I'm going to like. And I can add some more spots here on it. And then as it, again, branches out, it can get thicker. This is a great way to add some fun colors here. And remember, it doesn't have to look exactly like this. So go ahead and add whatever you want as you're going. One more branch coming out a little wider over here. Just like that. And then I'm going to let those dry a little bit. This off completely. And then we're going to take some white. Very carefully, barely pressing down. some little circles. We can dot a couple, make actual circles. Some can be bigger, some can be smaller, but we don't want them going all the way over here because that's not the way it would go. They're going to float up. As they come up higher, I might start making them a little bit bigger and further apart. Still keep a couple small ones in there. Do a little reflection on the inside and look more like a bubble. So you got that going. You can do as few or as many as you want. And then I'm going to take a little bit of water again, roll it into my white, really make sure it's nice and mixed in. I want to give some highlights here. So I'm taking that white and I'm just going to go ahead and just add some light spots on top of the green from the seaweed. So I'm not adding new seaweed. I'm just going right over top certain spots. It's whatever you think you want to do. Same thing back here. Not adding new, just going over top. We're going to go ahead and add a couple little highlights on here. And then as always, I want you guys to kind of take a step back, check it out, see how you did with everything, see if there's any details that you think you should change. If you want to add anything else, now's the time. And when you're done, you're going to go ahead and as always, you're going to clean out those brushes. Make sure they're all set for next time. Remember, you never want to leave those brushes in water and you don't want to leave paint in them because that's going to ruin them. Make sure they're all nice and dried off, cleaned out, and we're all set.